Hello everyone, I'm Brian from Brianoutdoors, and today I'm going to be doing a video on tying the Purple Prism Spey Fly. This is a fly that I've had a lot of success with over the last number of years for both spring and fall steelhead fishing. And I've tied this fly in a number of different combinations for the hackles. I like to use the Marabou Spey. I find that I get a lot of good movement out of that fly. You can also tie this more traditional with the heron spey hackles, as well as blue-eared pheasant dyed in the purple. However, both patterns work really well, and I've caught fish on both of these patterns tied this way. I'd like to tie this fly on a up-eye salmon hook. Gives it a nice profile as well, and thought it would be a great fly to teach you how to tie, because I've done very well with it, and I'm sure you will as well. Anyways, let's go to the bench and we'll tie up the Purple Prism. Okay, so the first thing to do, of course, is to get the salmon hook that you want to use to tie this fly, and it calls for a claret or a red thread, so you can get your red thread, and just lay a base layer on the shank, and just come down to just below the point of the hook, and that's where we're going to start our materials. First thing that we're going to be putting in, of course, is a counter rib. I'm going to be using the French, it's a uni French wire, and it's in silver, and I'll use this as my counter, so I'll lay this on first. This fly does not call for a tail, so we're going to be laying this in first. I like to use the counter rib to go over the tag as well of the fly. Next material that we're going to tie in is a flat silver tag, and tie that in at the butt as well on the opposite side, just to start. The tag on this fly does not need to be extremely long. And we'll wrap that forward. And we'll cut her off there. The next material that it calls for is the body material, which in this case we're going to be using a gold body, flat tinsel. So we'll catch that in. This is where we change to the gold side now. And we'll just start working our way down with the thread, and building up a little bit of a body just to keep it uniformed as well down here. And we want our silver, our gold tinsel to stop approximately, I would say, a little more than halfway up the body of the fly. And we'll cut it off right there. We have to leave enough room for our dubbing. We're going to have a front dubbed body on this, and we're also going to have a hackle that is palmered over the dubbing as well. Okay. So we'll keep our counter wire till the end. Okay, so the next material is the palmered hackle that will go over top of the dubbing. So we want to put the feather in first. I'm using a burnt spey hackle. You can use a variety of different types of hackles here. You can use the blue-eared pheasant dyed purple, or you can use, well, there's a variety of different materials you can use here. Schlappen is also another good material that can be used. And I like to tie it in with the point forward, the tip forward, and we're going to be palmering this over, either folding it back. A lot of times I will strip one side of that hackle off just to make the fly a little bit more sparse, and that generally works pretty well. So we'll just tidy this up a little bit here by the head, come back, and now we will prepare to put our dubbing on now. Okay, so now we're just going to create a dubbing loop, and I like to put a little bit of wax on the thread, of course, when I'm doing this, just so I can get a good grip on that dubbing materials. And we'll make a loop here, wind forward, just beyond the return of the eye. We want to leave ourselves a bit more space up here at the top as well. And the dubbing material that I'm going to be using here is a mixture of some ice dub, purple and red mixed together with some purple wool as well. So you can use a variety of different purple materials, add a little red in there just to give it a little extra color. But anyways, I'd like to take that in sections and just place it in between the dubbing loop. And I like to make this dubbing loop a little bit thicker. I like to have a nice nice thick dubbing on this fly. And then we will go ahead and spin that. And then we'll just wind that forward. And I like to take the material and brush it back as I do this, just to lay some of that dubbing back as well. Gives it a nice nice taper to it as well. And then we'll tie that off here. Then of course we'll palmer the hackle forward. In this position here I will fold that hackle and I will lay it back over the fly. Okay, now that we have the hackle palmered up over top of the dubbing, now we will take the counter rib and I will begin to wind that counterclockwise around the tag as well as the gold tinsel body. And just want to keep the feather fibers out of the way here while we do that. And I like to use the heavier wire as a counter because it does add a little more security to the tinsel. A lot of times when you're fishing for a steelhead and you catch a fish that has some fairly sharp teeth, you will in a lot of cases end up ripping your tinsel. So it's always good to have a good counter rib as well. When we get to the feather, we just want to start to maneuver the tinsel back and forth, or the rib rather, back and forth, and we'll work it through the fibers of that hackle. And you just pull them out as you go along, and we could always pick those out later if we have to come back with the bobkin and or take a needle and just kind of work through that a bit. There we go. And we'll tie that off on this side as well. You can come back into your hackle fibers and just kind of pick them back out again like this, going in between the hackle a little bit. And it's also good to do this. You pick out a little bit of the dubbing as well, and you can that gives you a little bit more of the fibers of the dubbing mixed in with your hackle. So you get a few of those red and purple fibers of the dubbing mixing tool. As you fish this fly, that will happen naturally. It will start to pick itself out a little bit and get a little bit roughed up. And I like the look of that because it adds a little bit more bugginess to the fly as well. Okay, so we're going to tie in our next material. We can either use marabou as the collared hackle on this fly, or we could also go with the heron. This is purple heron, dyed heron, and you could use either material. As you can see, this is much more of a sparse material, and that will make the fly that much more sparser. And I'm gonna do this fly with the marabou. I like the way that that flows in the water, so I will tie this one with the marabou spey, and I will tie this in by the tips. Just get a few of the tips out here, because you want to make sure that you do tie this in, get a part of that stem. So we'll tie this in on the side or the bottom, tips forward. And again, I'll fold this material back as well as I go along, and that will it'll help that hackle lay down nicely over the fly. So we'll be pulling, making sure one wrap goes in front of the other, and you'll probably only end up getting 2 or 3 turns out of the of this hackle, and that's exactly what you want. You don't want it to be overly dressed. As you fish with a fly like this, you're going to be losing some of the fibers anyways. They will fall off a little bit, and it will cause the fly to lose some of the fibers, and it'll get a bit more sparse as you fish it longer. So it's okay to have it a little thick to start. Just don't want to overdress it too much. So we'll just tie that material down. So that's going to flow nice in the water. You can already see how that's flared out nicely. It's going to cause a nice little push in the water. Okay, so the next material I like to add to this fly, the original recipe does not call for a for tinsel or any type of crystal flash. I like to use the Mirage flash. This is a really good material. It has purple accents in it as well. It's more of a mirror image, and it picks up the purple colors very, very nicely, as you can see. And I find that it adds quite a bit to the fly. You don't need a lot. I just take one strand and cut that in half, and then I'll tie in I'll tie it in on the side, a couple of wraps, and I'll fold it over and wrap in the other part. Do the same on the other side as well. So basically you're getting 2 strands on each side of the fly. That's all you need for that. It's just enough to give it a little bit of a flash when it's swinging through the water, and that adds quite a bit to the fly. The color of it really gets picked up by the accents there, and that's all it really takes sometimes, just to turn a fish, and so they can pick that fly up in different light conditions. Okay, so the next material we're going to tie in is a collar, and I'm going to be using a teal flank for that, and you can use wood duck or teal. usually works well. A barred type material is what you're looking for actually, so any of those style of feathers will work. And we'll just tie that in by the tip on the bottom, and then I'll begin to wrap that forward, also brushing back. I strip one side off of that stem, and I find that that gives me a little nicer collar. It lays down nicer on the fly, and I find that I get a nicer profile out of it. Okay, so the next material we're going to be using is the goose shoulder. This is a purple goose shoulder. They're pretty much the same length on either side, so I can actually use this one feather instead of looking for left and right. I can use that for both sides of the wing. And some people, if you can get a hold of some dyed mallard, that's bronze mallard wings, they'll work well as well. But I'm going to be using the goose dyed shoulder, and it's got a nice long feather there, so that's going to be more than enough for our wing. And what I like to do is come in and pick an area somewhere in the middle. I like to use for my bigger flies smaller section, generally from maybe a quarter of the way down to 3/4 of the way. So I have this section here. You'll probably get 5 or maybe 4 of the bigger flies, and then you can make your smaller flies with smaller wings by using the top section of the feather. So I'll actually go in here and I'll just cut the sections out that I want, and I'll start by actually snipping off the tip, and then I can come in and start working my way on the shoulders. And we want to try and cut those, I would say, somewhere in the vicinity of maybe a quarter. I would say about 1/4 of an inch would be what I would look for. And of course you want to cut directly beside the other feather that you snipped. That way you'll end up with two sections for your wing that are going to be very similar in thickness. Okay. The way I like to tie these in is actually a Spey style wing. Okay, so when I'm tying in the wing here, it's I like to do them one at a time. Some people like to do them together. I do it one at a time just because I'm always looking to get a certain length out of it. So I just make a soft loop. Kind of line it up directly down the middle if you can. And you might have to play around with these a couple of times to get them exactly the way you'd like them. It can turn into quite the situation, and I've spent a lot of time putting wings on flies and done it over and over and over again to just get it exactly the way I want it. And sometimes it happens right away, and sometimes it takes a few tries to do it. Anyhow, I like to put these in a, as I said, in a Spey style wing. That wing's not too bad. It's fairly close to what I'm looking for. So I can finish that off with a few wraps. And we'll snip off the remainder of the wing. And then we'll tidy that up a little bit. Okay, so once we get the wing set the way that you like, after you play with that for a little while and get it all straightened out, it's time to put the jungle cock eyes on. I like to put them on pretty much straight down the body line as well, and I just find that for some reason on this fly, that's always been the way I like the way it looks, and I believe that's the way it's called for as well. So you just want to line those up. Again, playing with those until you get them both relatively close to the same length. and it's easy to manipulate the eyes a little bit if you've only got a couple of wraps on them before you start tightening them down, and then you can start wrapping forward once you get them where you want them to be, and then you can I like to pull those stems back after I've applied the jungle cock eyes on there. Just take a couple of wraps in front and then one or two right on top of those. That way it kind of locks the stems in, and it's quite a slippery material. The jungle cock stems are a little bit on the slippery side, so you don't want them to be pulled out of the fly. Okay, so now we've left ourselves a little bit extra room there, so we can tie finish up the head here. Just keep stroking back that other material as well. And then we'll just put a couple of whip finishes in. Okay, the final step in completing your fly is to put a couple of coats of the head cement on. I always like to do 3 coats. Put one on, let it dry, put 2 more on after that, and pretty much gives you a good security for your the head of your fly to stay nice and shiny, and protects the fly as well if you happen to get snagged or hung up on stuff. So anyways, I always give any flies that I use as fishing flies, I like to give them 3 coats of head cement. And as you can see, the fly is quite a nice fly for movement, and stands right out nice. Hey everyone, thanks again for watching, and be sure to check out our website at brianoutdoors.com, and please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thank you. Straight shooting and tight lines. Bye for now.